So, Katrin, thank you so much for taking this time with us. You were gonna be with us, yeah, and this is the life of the politicians.
Yes, I would have been very happy to be with you, and I was looking forward to it, but then I was called to Moldova, so I will be there today on an EPC meeting, which is really all about Europe and the status of Europe during this terrible invasion of Russia into Ukraine. So I will have to be there. But I was beginning to look forward to it because I think what you're talking about and what you're doing with this forum, I think it has a huge relevance in our times.
Because you were telling me before the interview that actually what we were doing, because we are really grateful for your support through the years. You've been to the forum, you have addressed the forum, and I mean, now you took the step of officially supporting the forum, and you even wanted to participate. So I just wanted to say before we go forward that we are really grateful for that support. But I was also, yeah, I mean, it's so nice to hear that really that your connection to the forum made you think about how spirituality is somehow so divided from, I mean, from the daily lives almost, we can say, and definitely in politics.
Absolutely. I think maybe it's because I'm growing older, you know, I'm in my late 40s, and during the time when you're a young person bringing up babies and trying to make the payments of your apartment and all that, I guess that spirituality sometimes gets left out, and then you suddenly realize that we're living in, obviously to begin with, very hectic times in modern times, with all the new technologies that have really changed our lives, changed the way we interact. We're dealing with these huge environmental challenges, and at the same time, not just because of my existence, but also I think the world in general is really experiencing this. I think spirituality has somehow a little bit been forgotten in our modern times. We're all dealing with huge challenges. We are consumed with new technologies. We spend increased amounts of time on social media and in our phones. When do we have that moment where we really leave the phone behind and go inwards? And for a politician, as you say that, of course, our schedule is always very hectic. And I think many of us really miss that moment of spirituality in our lives.
So I would just like to ask you, I mean, how do you practice your spirituality? Because I mean, we are talking about, I mean, our thoughts, our feelings, our values, how we connect to the values, and which, I mean, yeah. So I could maybe start to ask you, how do you nurture yourself, your inner being, and how do you connect with your values and sustain yourself in this work?
Well, sadly, I don't do enough. Let's begin there. But there are ways. I will just mention 3 ways. You know, I have never been a formal member of a church, but still I sometimes go to church just to experience the ritual and the peace within the church. I look for solace in music, and I use that moment really to sit down and think, you know, maybe just to contemplate. And then, of course, and maybe because I studied literature, to read some literature, not least poetry, gives me a moment to think really about life and about the spiritual side of life. But then, as I said,
do you meditate?
I think during some, you know, I listen to music, and I think what I'm doing is sort of a meditation, because I really go inwards and think about really the flow of life, if I may say so. So yes, I do that my way, but I'm not really into the theory of meditation. But I used to meditate when I was a teenager.
Oh, you did?
So I have an experience from, you know, I was really into yoga and meditation at that time.
Do you believe that, I mean, there is something greater than ourselves, some force of love or some force behind every existence, every being, or how do you relate when you connect within?
Well, I think being an environmentalist and a great lover of nature, I think when I'm out in nature, I simply cannot think anything else than there is some force greater than just us, the humans. And I think we really have to learn to value the forces of nature. And here in Iceland, obviously, you have opportunity to go out and really experience that nature, experience the power of the ocean, the waterfalls, everything we see around us, which really reminds us that we're all part of a much bigger entity.
Interesting. So if I your values that you hold dear. I mean, do you have some overriding principles as Prime Minister, for example? And which values are there that you hold dear, and how do you see them in practice, and how have you tried to put them in practice? Because we are at the forum we are exploring how values, how inner work, how change consciousness actually brings about transformation to the better in the world.
Yeah.
So also, how do you see this connection? I mean, and how have you seen it in your work?
Well, this is actually a very difficult question, because I am used to answering that question about politics, and political values. And obviously I can talk for hours about equality, social justice, climate justice, the value of the environment, and equality, not just concerning gender equality, but equality in general. So there are many things that I could talk about but when you ask me about the personal values, it grows more complicated, because how do you actually transfer them into what you're doing in your work? Well, I think the political values are definitely part of my personal value set, if I may phrase it like that. But I think also personal values are about how you work and how you really approach every day in your life. I have tried to be very mindful that you don't come in with all the answers, that you need to be ready to learn, and you need to be ready to change your opinions. That can be very delicate in politics, because sometimes people expect politicians to never change their opinions. I have decided I'm not going to be that kind. I'm just going to be very humble and admit that I don't know everything, and I will have to be able to change during my work as politician. I have also tried to talk to people who don't always agree with me. That's a value, because I think it's very dangerous just to be always with the people that you agree with. And I think this is really a value concerning that you need to embrace diversity, and you need to be able to admit that, again, you don't have all the answers. So I think the personal values that I really stand on is to be able to really embrace the diversity of humankind,
And be kind to everyone. I think many see you as a caring leader. And I take just one example from what happens, I think, last week when you had the leaders meeting here in Reykjavik, Iceland. And you greeted everyone with warmth and love, like you do with everyone, I could say. And the Prime Minister of Italy, because he comes from the right wing, and you were really harshly criticized, because you greeted her also with love. I mean, like you did with everyone. And for me, I think this is so important, because, and it maybe comes to the question, like you were saying, which is so important. How do we want to counter all this polarization in society if we are not going to listen to others that do not share the same opinion as us?
Well, I think this really pinpoints what I'm saying about embracing diversity. It's quite a lesson learned when you realize that not everybody agrees with you. And during my times as teenager, I thought everybody was just, they don't agree with me, they don't know anything. And I have actually learned a lot and realized it's not as simple as that. And I think it's very important, if we think about the big challenges that that humankind is faced with, we need to be able to talk to everybody, even those who we disagree with in many very deep issues.
And
of
try
course,
to understand their...
of course there are some limits, and sometimes people cross those limits and you simply can't have that dialogue with them. And I'm not saying that, I think we all must admit that there can be limits, but I think the first step should always be to try to understand, try to reach a compromise. As I said, there are limits to that, but I think this should always be the first step. And then if you realize that there is no compromise, then you simply have to also be able to realize that and admit that.
Yeah, because I mean, we live in a hugely polarized society all around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, and also, I mean, increased like cancel culture, that you are just supposed to be on this opinion, and if you're not, I don't talk to you. And but I just think it says a lot about you as a political leader. You have been in this government with really different political parties, and you have sustained that for many years. And and maybe it comes to those values that you were talking about. But what would you say? Which values have helped you doing that? Keep this collaboration of those very different parties. I mean, what magic qualities of yours are behind that?
Well, I think, of course, it's not just my doing. Obviously, the people I'm working with are also ready to kind of show this understanding and try to work hard to find solutions. And as I said, there are limits, when it comes to human rights, for example. There are, in my view, limits on what you can do. But I think, for example, the government I've been leading have been able to take really progressive steps when it comes to human rights. And you mentioned polarization in the world. I think the deepest polarization we see now is really about this struggle between different parties when it comes to human rights, gender equality, LGBTI persons, all the different people in the world that are really, where we are really seeing a backlash in rights. And I think at that point it's so important to really maintain that dialogue, and because we're doing it really for the greater good, the human rights of everybody. So I think this is really, if you can reach an agreement on the principles, like the human rights issue, I think you should be ready to do a lot of work to solve other issues.
And it is about, like you have said also in other interviews, and actually here as well, it's about listening.
Yes.
And not just, I mean, the dialogue needs to go on.
And that's where spirituality comes in, because we are often so busy in our daily lives that we really forget to listen, because we're looking at our phones or thinking about something else. And I think, therefore, what you are doing in really raising awareness of the fact that if we don't nurture our spirituality the same way that we should nurture, that we should keep on doing exercise, eat healthy food and all that, but do not forget the fact that we need to nurture spirituality. And then that really helps you to listen and take the deep thoughts, We tend to be a little bit on the surface. We need to get the time and to concentrate and go really deep.
And how can we bring more spirituality into politics then?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure I have the answer, because I think,
And actually maybe more caring into institutions. We are talking about changing systems.
Yes.
And this connection between the inner and the outer. And we are actually living in systems that thrive on wars. That thrive on conflict. We have the military industrial complex behind that. We have huge corporate interest. We have systems that thrive on us being sick. We have systems that have degraded the nature. What for you? I mean.
Well, you talk about care. Yeah. And I think, in my opinion, caring is something that has been related to women and feminine values. But when you talk about conflicts, as I sometimes say, if we had more women making the decisions in the world, we would have less conflict. We would have less environmental problems, because they actually have shown in their work that they have a different set of values, and we need more of those values when decisions are made.
And how can we bring that into politics? I mean, now you come from Iceland. We are one of the most peaceful countries in the world.
And
Actually, number one.
And one of the countries with the most gender equality.
Yes.
I think that's... I think that's related. I think the fact that we have achieved a lot of progress when it comes to human rights is also part of that. But how can we bring... Yes, I think we need more diverse people in politics. That's one thing, not just women, but people that are more diverse, with more diverse backgrounds. And I think we need to raise awareness that we need to lift those values. And caring is not a soft value.
Caring, no.
It's not a soft value. It's not something just for women, because I mentioned it's maybe more a feminine value. It's a value that we should really lift and treat equally with other more traditional values. The caring economy, think about that. During the pandemic, how we realized that if we did not have all those people taking care of each other, what would have happened?
I'm thinking, because I mean, that is actually maybe one project, and Stuart Wallace is actually here with us at the forum. He is leading the Wellbeing Economy Alliance.
Yes.
And you were leading one of the well-being. You decided to be part of the well-being government collaboration, which is connected to the alliance. So I mean, this is, I mean, in a way, I mean, that's your project where you are really trying to put the values inside the system.
That's where I'm really trying to transfer my values into political transformation, and I'm very excited about that, because you could feel in the beginning it was considered to be a little bit like, kind of her interests. But now people are suddenly realizing that politics is not just about GDP. It's not just about economic growth, and absolutely not. Because what's the importance of economic growth if everybody is unhappy? So talking about happiness and talking about well-being is really, I think, the core project of every politician, to really think about how do the people in this country feel, and what can I do as a politician, as a prime minister, to really help them to follow their dreams, to increase their well-being, to get opportunities, to really flourish. So I think this has been one of the most exciting projects I have participated in. I've learned a lot from my fellow leaders in that collaboration. I think women have been instrumental in promoting that. And I think also this idea that we really want to transform the values that we based our society on.
Tell me, the theme of the forum is healing a world in crisis, leading with authenticity and love. I mean, authenticity is maybe a little bit, difficult. We have many words for that in Icelandic, actually. So, I mean, for you, because, we see a lot of mistrust in political leaders. And maybe, one reason is that we do not feel political leaders are authentic. It could be one reason, at least in my opinion. For you, what is it to be an authentic leader? What does that value mean to you?
I think every politician and every leader, obviously, I think all of us have experienced thinking, am I out of my league? Am I in too much depth? But I think the most important thing for a political leader is to remember that we're also just human beings, and really stay connected to the roots. So what I have done is to just continue to do the things I did before I became a prime minister. I know it's more easy in Iceland than other countries, because we are, as you said, the most peaceful country in the world. So I actually can go to the grocery store and meet people. I can go to the swimming pool and just be myself. I don't have to have any bodyguards, which is such a relief. I'm not sure I would like to be a prime minister if I were under such security measures, because I really want to be able to stay in touch with people and continue just to be the human being I am, and I will continue to be when I leave politics.
But is it challenging for you? To hold on to your principles, your values? You have people with you, you have people against you. Do you think it has been, and also, connected, maybe healing a world in crisis, connected with resilience? How you have been able to bounce back from all the challenging situations you are in every day almost?
Well, it's been challenging, but I have been very clear from the beginning that I'm not going to stop being a human being, even though I'm in politics. If I feel that's happening, I'm leaving politics. So I'm going to continue just to be that person. And obviously not everybody likes that person, that's perfectly fine. But I think it's very important. And of course, I must also say, because none of us, we are not alone. I have a very strong family. I have very good friends. And I think they have also helped me just to stay in the core, if I may say so, through those, nearly 6 years now.
Wow. So just the last question.
Yeah.
If you would have a key message to global leaders of how we can heal and transform our world towards a more united, regenerative, and peaceful future, what would be your key message as an Icelandic female prime minister to the global leaders of the world?
Well, I think caring is the key message, because that really captures what we're trying to do when it comes to the environment, when it comes to lifting equality, erasing poverty. I think we need to really build on that emotion. I firmly believe is very strong within all of us, and dare to really let caring be also our guide in what we do. And I think, again, to really nurture that spiritual side of us, which allows us to be a little bit caring.
Katrin, thank you so much for your time.
Takk.
Takk fyrir.